Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Heard, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the OnFARM Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of OnFARM. It's Anna here today, and I'm introducing this episode partly because Monty is flat out in the lambing shed. As you'll know, spring is the busiest time of year for sheep farmers, so he is absolutely up to his eyes. On our arable farm here in East Lothian, it's sowing time, so things are busy here too. It's just nice to see sunshine and things really starting to grow. Now, that's perhaps a bit of a tangent, but of course, sod's law, isn't it, that during these times when you're hugely busy and have least capacity, that's when things tend to go wrong, or issues come in from the side that hit you for six, and you really don't have time or knowledge to deal with them. Today's episode is a partnership with law firm Gillespie Macandrew. They run the NFU Scotland Legal Helpline, a free phone service for any NFU Scotland member who has a legal question or concern that they want a bit of help or reassurance with, whether it be large or small. We thought it would be helpful to tell you a bit about the helpline and the sorts of things it can help with.
Sometimes members are just phoning up for some reassurance on a point. A lot of the time that is what we're there for. We're there for a second opinion. We're there to give them a steer, and whatever we can do to help, we're more than happy to.
We've had calls where people have ordered equipment. Steel, for example, the price of steel has gone up massively, and people phone up and say, can I insist on the price that I was quoted to begin with, or do I have to pay the price that the merchant's now asking me?
You just heard from Alan and Jamie, part of the Gillespie Macandrew team that run the helpline. We sent OnFARM producer Dave Howard to meet them at their headquarters in Edinburgh's West End.
Hi, I'm Alan White. I am a partner at Gillespie Macandrew, and I'm responsible for oversight of NFU Scotland's legal helpline.
My name's Jamie Seath. I am a solicitor in the Land and Rural team at Gillespie Macandrew, and I take calls on the NFUS legal helpline. This is the upstairs floor of the Gillespie Macandrew office here in Edinburgh. We're currently walking round past the lovely marketing team, and now we're entering into the Land and Rural business team. This is my desk. This is where the magic happens, so to speak. I'm very fortunate I've got a window seat. I don't know quite how that's happened, but yes, this is where we are, and this is the team.
So how many of you are here? So if I'm sitting at home and I'm thinking, do you know what, I need to call Gillespie Macandrew because I've got a legal inquiry, how many people are here? How many people are receiving the calls? How does that work?
So there are 6 people primarily that man the helpline, so your chances of reaching somebody are very, very high. Our main focus is on getting back to you as soon as possible to deal with your query. We understand a lot of these are quite time sensitive as well, so we do take that into account. In the strange event that there was nobody available, for example at lunch, then it would go through to our voicemail system and somebody would pick up at that point.
The helpline is a member benefit for members of NFU Scotland. It's there to provide initial advice on legal issues for members, so a member can call up the helpline and they can speak to somebody like Jamie or one of his colleagues, and they'll get 20 minutes of free legal advice. The advice that we give in the helpline is general advice, so because we haven't seen papers, we don't have the caller's title deeds in front of us and so on, so it's got to be general, but we hope that it's helpful.
So what are the sorts of calls that you've handled over the years? What are the sorts of things that people are getting in touch with you about?
So there's a few recurring themes. The helpline gets about 300 give or take, calls a year. Topics that come up regularly are employment issues, tenancy issues, succession issues, succession planning even where it's not a tenancy. And something else we hear quite a lot about is things like access rights and sheep worrying and so on. Particularly this time of year, it's coming up to lambing time. Members are concerned and they ring up and say some areas are worse than others. If you're close to a settlement, obviously you're more likely to have people walking through your farm, and so they want to know, what can I do about a dog running wild in my fields? That's the sort of advice where we know what the law is, we can tell you what your rights are, and we can also tell you about what the member of the public's access rights are and so on. There's a balance in that scenario, but fundamentally, you have to look after your livestock. And then we get specific things that have happened in the industry. We had a lot of calls when the grain merchants went into liquidation and so on. So it's good, it keeps us at the forefront of the industry because we have to keep up to speed with developments.
Yeah. Jamie Allen's a partner. He's far too expensive to be the one manning the phone lines, I'm sure. You're a member of the team that is actually on the phones, getting the calls from farmers up and down Scotland. What sort of calls are you getting? What are you hearing from people about?
Well, it's really from very big issues to very what they might deem as minor issues. A lot of what we see tends to be perhaps boundary disputes, in particular maintenance and erection of fencing, who's responsible for the cost of that, who's responsible for ongoing maintenance thereafter. As Alan had alluded to, in general, a lot of these points we would only really be able to provide specific advice if we saw title deeds, for example. But where we can give general high-level advice. For example, common law maintenance of fencing or mutual boundaries is split between each landowner on either side. Yeah, we do what we can. It's very interesting being a part of it, and you get some funny queries, but it's really rewarding as well, getting to help the members.
We'll maybe get into some of the slightly odd or esoteric queries in a little bit, but before we do, I wanted to come back to Alan. Just thinking about myself, Alan, it's quite a high bar, potentially, to me wanting to pick up the phone and call a solicitor about something. You kind of feel like it would need to be a significant issue for me to want to make that call. One of the things that you're keen to get across is that it doesn't have to be that significant, does it? You're there, and this is a service provided to NFU Scotland members.
Yeah, I think approaching a solicitor's probably can be an intimidating thing, and a farmer could sit and think, I wish I knew the answer to this, but I don't want to bother MD, I don't want to incur the cost or whatever, I haven't got the time. And the benefit of the helpline is you can ring up, you can get some general advice at the very least, you can get a pointer. It might be that we say to the caller, look, you do need to, this is potentially quite a serious issue, you do need to get proper advice on this, if you've been served court papers or something like that. But we hope to give some reassurance initially and at least give people a pointer as to where they need to go.
I'm just putting my cynical farmer hat on, Alan, and I'm thinking, if I'm on the phone to a lawyer and they're saying to me, you're going to need more help with this, you're going to need more time with a lawyer that you'll need to pay for, I might be thinking, I'm getting the hard sell here. I
mean, it's fair to say that a number of callers are calling the helpline probably because they don't have a regular solicitor contact. And so if we can help them, then we will, but we will do our best to give them as much advice as we can without seeing the papers, for example. And we would always say, if you've got a solicitor who holds your title deeds, for example, they will know them better than we do. So it's not a hard sell. Yes, we're very happy to help members, and if that requires them to be clients and it's something, particularly a technical legal point where maybe a local solicitor doesn't want to deal with it in some cases, then yes, we're happy to help, but we're certainly not a hard sell. We hope that the helpline is approachable. I think that's why we like having, dare I say it, younger members of the team on the helpline, because it's informal, it's phone for a chat, and hopefully you can get some help with your problem.
Jamie, you wanted to pick up on that.
Yeah, I think an important point to make is that, as Alan said, we're not here to sell ourselves as a firm to take clients on. Sometimes members are just phoning up for some reassurance on a point. It might be that they already think they know the answer and they just want confirmation. A lot of the time that is what we're there for. We're there for a second opinion. We're there to give them a steer, and whatever we can do to help, we're more than happy to.
And the point as well, straightforwardly, is that they pay their subs to NFU Scotland, and this is a service that's provided as a result of the subs that they pay.
Exactly that. It's a member benefit, and we're there to help the members.
Now, Jamie, something I'm dying to ask you as the guy that's picking up these calls, answering the phones, give us an example of some of the queries you're getting that really make you raise your eyebrows, really stump you, or that really give you a new insight into farming.
Well, there has been a few. I think one that probably, it wasn't myself actually that dealt with it, but one that sticks out is that a member had phoned up and had a query regarding the possible damage to his bull's semen, which was quite surprising and something that I hadn't expected to encounter, but something that we're more than happy to pass on to our colleagues in dispute resolution so that they could advise him on a potential claim for damages.
Damaged how, Jamie?
Well, apparently they were roughly handled, so I don't quite know what that means. I didn't ask for further details, but yeah, there can be a lot of different queries that pop up.
The bull was roughly handled, or the semen straws were roughly handled?
You'd have to ask him, but yeah, it was definitely a interesting one to hear about. But what I would say though is an important point: we're not here to judge any of the queries. We're certainly here as a very impartial party to ask.
Yeah, I mean, bull semen's quite central to the businesses of a lot of people in rural Scotland. It's just quite a funny image to people, I guess, from non-farming backgrounds. But Jamie, you are from a farming background, right? You've got family that are farming now.
Yeah, my family has a sheep farm just outside Salon. It's been interesting over the years. They've always dabbled, and it's great to be involved in, and it really, I think, gives me a bit of perspective in what a lot of the members would like to discuss, even just from a sort of vocabulary standpoint. I know the terms that they're going to use. I know the things that they're worried about. That definitely, I think, assists a lot of the time.
Maybe you don't think about things in this way very often, but given your rural background, given that you've got a family who farm sheep, does it give you quite a lot of job satisfaction to be answering these calls?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very rewarding, especially when you can help somebody when they're particularly worried about an issue. If you can give them that sort of reassurance that everything's going to be okay, then definitely it's very helpful. And even in the event that there is something that is potentially awry, then it is satisfying knowing that you have helped them realise that there is an issue there and it needs to be dealt with, and this is how to go and deal with it.
I think that's important, isn't it, Alan? I mean, we're here in your really very nice headquarters in central Edinburgh, in the West End. People picking up the phone might be thinking, I'm not going to get somebody who understands these issues, I'm not going to get somebody who speaks my language, whereas they're going to get somebody like Jamie.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's important to be approachable, and when not all of our lawyers have the experience that Jamie has or the background that Jamie has, but a number of our lawyers do come from rural farming backgrounds, and that's important to us and our staff because, well, as Jamie said, they understand the language, they understand the significance of some events that will come up, and so it does, I think, help deal with helpline calls. And I think if you've got that rural background knowledge, then you're much more receptive to whatever a caller might have on their mind.
Something else that I think is interesting, Alan, particularly about this helpline, Gillespie Macandrew's the partner law firm to NFU Scotland. Actually, when Jamie and his colleagues are receiving these calls, if there is a particular pattern to the calls or something new that's emerging, you've got a real frontline sense, I guess, from that of what's happening in Scotland's rural economy.
I think that's right. We've had recurring issues, or we have a volume of calls when something particularly happens. A number of years ago now, Proven Engineering had an issue with farm-scale wind turbines. They went out of business, and we had a huge amount of calls at that point. What do I do about this turbine I've got? So yeah, it keeps us on our toes. We have to be up to speed with what's happening in the industry. Just now, for example, we are faced with the Ukrainian crisis and what that means for wheat prices and so on. You don't need to be a farmer to know about the cost of fuel, but the price of fuel these days seems to be going up and up. Fertiliser's an extortionate price just now. I've heard a number of farmers decide, I just can't afford it. I'm just not going to buy fertiliser, and therefore I'm going to offload a substantial number of my stock because I just can't afford the winter keep for them.
I just don't quite understand what's the legal angle on that. Why would they be ringing the helpline about that?
I think what we have had in the helpline is we've had calls where people have ordered equipment. Steel, for example, the price of steel has gone up massively. You order a set of gates, the price that you were quoted when you ordered them, it might be double now. So, those are concerns, and people phone up and say, can I insist on the price that I was quoted to begin with, or do I have to pay the price that the merchant's now asking me? And it's not the merchant's fault. They've had to absorb a cost from the manufacturer probably, who in turn has had to pay the person who made the steel in the first place. So it's understanding that contractual nexus, I suppose.
That's actually a really good real-world example of the sort of thing you're talking about, where somebody might not know who to pick up the phone to. And actually what we need to do with this podcast is let them know that you can give them a call if they're members of NFU Scotland anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we understand that businesses are facing stress at the moment. As Jamie said, sometimes people need a bit of reassurance, or they need a bit of guidance, even just somebody to talk over the problem with and say, well, we're facing these issues and what can we do about it? And we might say, well, maybe you can reduce your employee overheads or something like that, and then we can talk about what are the employment law aspects of things like that. So there's a whole raft of issues that can be covered.
Jamie, you were nodding your head quite vigorously there when Alan was saying it's not just about strict legal questions. It can be about advice, guidance, even just a bit of support.
Yeah, exactly that. A lot of legal issues are born out of practical ones. So when it comes to things like access, a lot of the time you can give them a legal position, but then you're also trying to give them a practical view on it. Say there's a disagreement that you've got with a neighbour. I can tell you the legal position, perhaps, but I can also give you my view on what might be the best practical solution to the issue. Maybe coming to agreement with the neighbour might be better than sort of turning around and throwing the legal position in their face and trying to win the argument. It may be in everyone's interest to try and resolve things.
You might have won the argument, but they're still your neighbour.
Exactly that. You've got to think about the long-term view as well, and the relationships of the people that you live next to can be impacted sometimes if you take too heavy-handed a view.
Just to flip this on its head a little bit, Alan, at the end of the podcast, we've talked a lot about how farmers and the farming community can benefit from the service. But one thing I'm learning today is that actually it's a benefit to Gillespie Macandrew to offer this helpline as well.
Yeah, there's a benefit to Gillespie Macandrew because our staff who deal with helpline calls, and even the chat about a helpline call in the office, makes people much more aware of issues that will not come across the average lawyer's desk ever, probably. So there's a benefit to us, undoubtedly, in that, as I said earlier, our staff develop an understanding of the farming industry, get to know some of the more technical terminology that farmers will use in the helpline. So yeah, there's undoubtedly a benefit to us.
And actually it's often kind of younger, newer lawyers that have joined the team here, and you're trying to get them kind of really match fit and primed and ready to succeed in your world here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's invaluable in that sense, and that's why we staff the helpline with more junior people. It gets them an exposure to, as I said, anything. You could be asked anything in the helpline. So, yeah, it gets them that exposure, gets them thinking on their feet. Hopefully they will say, if I don't know the answer to that, I'll find out and I'll give you a call back. That happens quite frequently. Sometimes we have to refer to a specialist department like dispute resolution, employment, so on. But yeah, it's just the experience of the broad range of issues that farmers can face.
Alan White, Jamie Seath here at Gillespie Macandrew's headquarters in Edinburgh. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
There you are. It's a bit of a change to have Dave Howard's voice in the podcast, but always good. He's usually behind the scenes, of course. So if you're a member of NFU Scotland, to get in touch with the legal helpline provided by Gillespie Macandrew, the number to call is 0131 271 8585. So that's 0131 271 8585. We have also put the number into the show notes for this episode, which you can find in your podcast player. Before I go, 2 quick reminders for you. The first one is that there are still a few spaces left on the Be Your Best Self programme, which is a Scottish Government funded programme for women in agriculture that teaches personal development, leadership skills and a whole range of really useful things for any females working in or around agriculture. So you can still apply for cohorts starting in April and in May. So if you just Google Be Your Best Self Development Programme for Women in Agriculture, you'll be able to find a link. The link to apply is on the Scottish Government website, so have a look and find it there, or get in touch with us. It's on Twitter at @on_farm UK if you're having trouble, and we can send you the link. A really worthwhile programme. I've been observing it very closely and it is fantastic. The second reminder is, of course, that the OnFARM podcast is made by our team at Scene&HerdPR and Marketing. So talk to us if you'd like any help with communications or marketing, and definitely talk to us if, like Gillespie Macandrew, you'd like to sponsor some episodes. It's a really great way of getting your name out there. Meantime, take care, good luck if you're lambing or sowing, and we'll see you next week.